Hey, welcome to the podcast. This is The Surge Effect, and I'm your host, Mike Surge. This podcast will be talking about anything and everything, life in general to current events and past events, and all things about this beautiful and wonderful world that we live in. And this podcast, well, it'll probably have an effect on you. Hey there, welcome again to another episode of The Surge Effect. All right, so basically in today's, news cycle, I have to reiterate again what's going on a little bit in the news in regards to the truckers up in Ottawa. So a study has been performed by a place called CentraTrack. Their documents. They've been censoring people on the internet, and it's kind of wild. So what they've been doing is they've been targeting for free speech. And so far, there's just like hundreds and hundreds of total cases that have been censored. They're all the way from Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Google Ads, TikTok, YouTube. These are some of the platforms that some of these things have been restricted on. Individuals and organizations censored include some of the most prominent influencers on social media. Podcaster Joe Rogan, conservative host Dan Bongino, Mark Levine, Tucker Carlson, Senator Ron Paul, Ron Johnson, and other news organizations like Fox, Reason Magazine, and even prominent academic journalists like the British Medical Journal of Medicine. So some of these fact checkers and doing their censoring so people can't hear information, it's a little outrageous. Anyway, so the media up in Ottawa, around the world, they're continuing to tell lies. All right, so I'm just going to play a little clip here for you, and you can watch it. It's a little long. It's a minute and a half, 2 minutes. I'm going to let you watch it, and let me know what you think. We'll be right back.
Sedition, insurrection, a threat to democracy.
This city is under siege. They are now calling it an occupation.
Alarming situation there in Ottawa.
The police chief is calling it a nationwide insurrection driven by madness.
This is kind of our insurrection by air horn moment. I think it's part of the globalization of Trumpism.
Canadians know where I stand.
There hasn't been as much violence as some had perhaps projected, but that does not necessarily mean that it has been peaceful.
Reports of severe vandalism and criminal behavior.
Streets are clogged. The honking is incessant and deafening.
This pandemic has sucked for all Canadians.
Residents that I have spoken to who say they feel terrorized, intimidated.
Residents say they feel like hostages.
Residents in that area say that they are being held hostage, that this freedom convoy, as they call it, has essentially imposed a lockdown on them.
Some protesters harassed a soup kitchen.
These anti-vaxxers actually took food from the mouths of the homeless.
Hungry, yeah.
Because they're so put upon.
There have not been any violent outbursts. However, horns have been honking for 12 to 21 hours a night.
The small fringe minority of people who are on their way to Ottawa or who are holding unacceptable views that they're expressing.
Many of them are holding Confederate flags.
I've heard there's QAnon supporters in the crowd.
We've seen swastikas. We've seen the Confederate flag. We've seen flags with Justin Trudeau, our prime minister, in a noose. Lots of Donald Trump flags as well. People chanting, "Let's go, Brandon."
It is actually one of the rare times in history you're going to see swastikas and yellow stars at the same protest.
A few people shouting and waving swastikas does not define who Canadians are.
Ottawa is being besieged by a group of anti-do-anything-about-COVID truckers called the Freedom Convoy. A so-called Freedom Convoy.
So-called Freedom Convoy of truckers. It's a cult.
Yes, it is.
We've heard it called a nationwide insurrection.
A threat to democracy, an insurrection, sedition.
This is a moment for responsible leaders to think carefully about where they stand and who they stand with.
All right, so calling these truckers terrorists or insurrectionists. An insurrection is a violent uprising against authority. Well, who's telling the lies? going to show you another little clip. And this is the Canadian truckers talking about Trudeau because Trudeau's calling them terrorists. So have a look.
Personally, I think it's a little bit funny, you know, because he's calling us terrorists, yet we have 6-year-old kids out here playing hockey. We have 4 or 5 bouncy castles during the weekend with hundreds of kids playing around in bouncy castles. I mean, if that's a terrorist, there's a lot of people out there that are a lot worse off, you know, so.
Some horsemen, some honking and some noise. Communism.
Well, I think it's disgusting for any leader of a country to vilify people for exercising their democratic right, their right to protest, their right to demonstrate peacefully.
I think it's terrible.
No, I think it's he's just really making a mockery out of himself more than anybody else, because people have eyes.
What he's portraying is that's not what we're doing, right? We're here, I've seen lots of kids around, it's not cause no problems, right?
It's totally awful.
So he's a racist himself, right? There's no racism going on here.
He's said many times publicly that he supports peaceful protest, but except, I guess, when it disagrees with what he believes or what narrative that he wants people to follow. As my brother-in-law said, he needs to be a man and step up and just come out and talk to us. That's all we're asking. We're not trying to overthrow the government. We're not trying to ruin democracy. We're following democracy.
I think that he's treating us like a minority would be treated.
You can walk around the side of the car and see all the thank you notes from little kids. You know, there's no racist drawings. You know, we're all enjoying it. It's like the most beautiful thing you've ever seen coming together across all of Canada.
All right, so once again, I'm going to read you our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. It's just a fundamental freedoms that are in our charter, okay? So we're free to think our own thoughts and speak our own minds. We're able to listen to views of others and express our opinions in creative ways. We also have free to meet with anyone we wish and participate in peaceful demonstrations. This includes the right to protest against a government, an action, or an institution. So this is a lawful act that's going on. They're protesting basically government overreach. This government has overstepped for 2 years, and the Canadians have just sat idly by and have just done exactly what they've wanted. And it's getting to the point now where people are just like, enough's enough. And the rest of the world are looking at what's going on. And they're taking notice. They're sitting up and going, hey, what are these friendly Canadians doing? These please and thank you and law-abiding citizens. What are they doing? So the world's sitting up and taking notice of what this country is doing. And I'm going to show you another little clip of these terrorists and anarchists. All right? So have a look at this.
Hatred, love, in all thy soul's command. Cry the blanche de la vida, il secolo de la croix. Ton disquietude éprouvé des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard Oh, Canada, we stand on guard. We stand on guard. We stand on guard for thee.
Okay, so pay close attention to the people who are controlling the narrative and the mainstream media. Since when is it okay for the police to break the law and steal from people? Stealing gasoline so humans can possibly freeze in their trucks, all because politicians don't want to sit down and talk with a peaceful protest? Have a look.
Taking more jerry cans. Cops stealing more cans. Cops stealing more cans. I don't even think they have the names on those cans. It'd be very hard to give them back after the court had already told they can't take them. But no, the cops like the jerry cans. Want to make sure the truckers don't have enough heat so they can freeze at night. Yeah, sure, no problem. Back up while you're stealing somebody's property, no problem. Sounds like a great idea. Yeah, that's amazing. Beautiful. Police now don't help people, they steal their fuel.
Police steal the diesel for the truck drivers. That's nice features for Germany. Look at these guys stealing fuel.
Stealing fuel. Stealing fuel. Stealing fuel. Oh yeah, look at this. Yeah. Way to go, guys. Thanks a bunch. We really appreciate it.
Ottawa's finest. Some jokes to the police. They seem to be short.
Very fast.
Get out of my way.
Yes.
Really. You're on Canadian soil.
What do you pay?
Support the police. They're
Yep.
Let's get the OPP in here.
Everybody else lost their job. What makes you special?
Let's get the RCMP here.
The next generation.
Not
See
minions.
the speech.
How did the Canadians circumvent this issue? Well, like patriots do. They bring fuel so other human beings don't freeze to death. These racist, misogynistic, swastika-flying hate mongers have their nerve helping other people in need. Have a look. Okay, so why did the government of Canada, along with councillors and the mayor of Ottawa, want to cancel the GoFundMe page for the truckers with over $10 million in it? Just ask yourself a simple question. So, they did. They canceled GoFundMe, and what they do? They opened up another one. It was called Give, Send, Go. So they gave that a whirl. And what did our Premier of Ontario try to do, Doug Ford? This is from True North. The Ontario government has secured a court order to freeze access to millions of dollars donated to the Freedom Convoy through crowdfunding platform Give, Send, Go. Well, Give, Send, Go responded by saying, Canada has absolutely zero jurisdiction over how we manage our funds. So why is the government trying so hard to take away these funds to help out a cause? that the truckers and the rest of Canadians know to be overreached by this tyrannical government. Most people don't want the truth. They just want a constant reassurance that what they believe is the truth. Common sense goes a long way. If you don't believe me, just watch some of these patriotic Canadians tell you. Watch this.
My name's Eddie Cornell. I'm a veteran of the Canadian Forces. I served in a combat arms trade, and I'm calling on all fellow veterans to stand up for your country once again. You're not wearing your uniform at this point, but you're a soldier, no less the same that you were prior to retiring. We are in a very critical situation in this country where our freedoms have been taken away. All of you know what it's like to stand up for freedom and democracy around the world. We've done it, and it's your turn to do it here in our own country. They're starting to take it away. You can see it, you can smell it. I need you to come here and support this action. You have to be part of something bigger than yourself. Don't be afraid to put yourself in harm's way like you did before. Putting yourself in harm's way got you where you are now, and you need to do it once again. I'm calling Stand 2 for all my brothers and sisters that served to come. Come to Ottawa. If you can't come to Ottawa, stand up in your community. Let your voice be heard. And I mean in a non-violent way. Violence is something that is not what we're trying to have anything do to incite insurrection or anything of that nature. I'm asking you in a peaceful manner to come forward and stand up for your country and hold.
Why is the government trying so hard to stop a movement of peaceful protesters who have sparked a fire all over this world? I've never been so proud to be a Canadian, watching freedom-loving Canadians across this land from all colors and faiths and backgrounds stand together against what most Canadians know not to be right and just. Here's another patriotic Canadian soldier laying it on the line. Have a look.
Good day, folks. My name is Major Stephen Schladowski. I have served Canada in the Canadian Armed Forces for 20 plus years. I hold a first-class honors degree in political science, and I have held several Army command positions. I have an urgent message for all Canadians. For nearly 2 years, our own elected government officials have been using the bullying tactics of fear, intimidation, coercion, and financial and physical violence against us to gain compliance for certain repeated medical procedures. We tell our children that bullying is wrong. We know it to be so. Yet we allow our leaders to do this to us. They have knowingly and repeatedly violated the highest laws of the land in the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, as well as other signed international human rights agreements. Canadians have been lulled into believing that the same government who suppresses your freedoms in the name of safety will one day just reward you back with your freedoms if you just comply to ever-changing rules and health orders. That, folks, is the very definition of tyranny, not democracy. Humans are inherently free. Kings and queens and government cronies can't give you your basic human rights. They are naturally yours. They can't be given, they can't be taken. They can only be suppressed. In the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Queen Elizabeth is recognizing in law our fundamental freedoms. The federal and provincial governments of Canada have chosen, through a well-planned and orchestrated set of measures, to trick and fool and scare you, the very people who elected them and pay their salaries, into complying with the suppression of our basic human rights. They have knowingly betrayed you and me under the lie of safety. This past Remembrance Day, as I stood in front of the military cenotaph in Fredericton to honor my comrades who gave their lives for others' freedom, I overheard the Premier of New Brunswick, Premier Higgs, and our Member of Parliament, Jenica Atwin, tell members of the public how special it was that these brave members of the military gave their lives for their freedom, that same freedom that these very liars and deceivers are actively working right now to suppress. I stood there, a soldier of nearly 21 years, as a senior officer in the Canadian Army, as a veteran of Afghanistan, participating in Op Medusa, the largest combat operation for Canada since the Korean War, where I watched my own brave comrades fight and get injured and die. But I also stood there as a person who hasn't taken the COVID-19 injection. The irony. So even though I serve this country, and it has been an honor to do so, an absolute honor, like many thousands of Canadians who choose body autonomy and pro-choice, I am unable to share in the same privileges now, like eating at a restaurant, going out in public to an event, or even traveling across provinces to see my child. This is happening to many others. These government traitors to freedom are suppressing the rights of the very people they claim to honor, and it made me sick to my stomach. These Canadian governments are now focused on our children with a medical genetic therapy that is now proven by repeated medical journals studies not to prevent COVID infection nor to prevent its transmission to others. For our children, serious illness and death is non-existent from COVID-19 unless your child is chronically unhealthy to begin with. Yet the toxin that is in this injection will have serious, life-damaging, permanent effects to your child's health immunity. That fact of natural T-cell and DNA damage has also come to light recently by medical scientist studies. I am calling on the medical community to put an immediate halt on these children's injections until the Canadian public can receive the accurate, truthful data from these COVID injection injuries that have already occurred. The Canadian public has a right to be able to make informed medical choices, especially for their little children. To tell them repeatedly it is safe and effective and not give them that choice is a crime, and it's also genocide. The media and government must put an immediate halt to all scientific medical censorship and the silencing of health professionals who do not comply with your agenda, as well as hear from COVID injection injury victims. The Canadian public has a right to hear from those in our communities and families who have been injured by this procedure. I am calling on my military and police comrades, all of you, all of us who have sworn a personal oath to protect our family, our friends, and our community, to now stand up and protect your loved ones against this government-forced medical tyranny. You chose to serve because you wanted to give back to your community. And instead, the government has turned your love for community and your loyalty against you, and you are now a weapon against the very people you love. Brothers and sisters, you can't be forever changing indiscriminate government measures which use fear and violence, and also be for your loved ones and for freedom. You have to choose. I am asking you to choose your family and your community. This is why you serve. And this is your moment to be a hero for your loved ones. They deserve the truth. They deserve to be protected. I am also calling on all Canadians to join in solidarity together. Freedom and love for our community. Freedom to choose who you want to be, where you want to live, what you want to experience and learn, what your spirituality is and what you want to practice, who you want to love, what you want to put in your own bodies is the foundation of our democracy in Canada. We cannot let freedom die with this generation. May God forever bless the free citizens of Canada.
So tell me all these Canadians you have seen are all racist, misogynistic, anarchists, and insurrectionists who want to overthrow a government. Are they all these people you've seen? Is that what they are? I don't think so. These Canadians are using their Charter of Rights and Freedoms to protest peacefully against overreach of a government who talks about businesses and the Ottawa citizens being held hostage in their city. How about the Canadians across this country being subjected to 2 or 3 weeks to flatten the curve, and then goes to 2 years of businesses being shut down, Canadians losing their jobs, businesses of hardworking Canadians for 30, 40 years being absolutely destroyed. Canadians losing their jobs because of coercion and not having their freedom to choose. Who has been the hostage? Some people must be watching the wrong thing unfolding here, because these people are not any of the things that they have been labeled. They want their freedom back. Ask yourself another simple question. Why won't this government simply sit down and talk with the protesters and come up with a reasonable solution to this problem? They have been asked numerous times by not only the protesters, but by the leaders of the PC party. Why won't they simply sit down and discuss what is going on in this country? Fair enough question. Thanks again for watching today's podcast, everybody. Have yourself a great day. Cheers. This episode sponsored by He Shirts, She Shirts. Go to www.heshirtssheshirts.ca. Just type in the letters TSA, The Surge Effect. When you check out, type in TSA for your coupon and receive 10% off your next purchase. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, everybody.